Hello, GovCMS community. My name is Alfred Deeb, Open Government Advocate and Founding Director at Salsa Digital. It's my pleasure to open up on our proof of concept, delivering a personalised citizen experience for GovCMS using rules as code. And co-presenting with me today are my two colleagues, Dr. Philippa Martin and Stephen Worley. For those who aren't familiar with GovCMS, GovCMS is an Australian whole-of-government digital program responsible for delivering information and services to citizens across approximately 400 sites based on the open source content management system, Drupal. GovCMS recently approached the market via an expression of interest to seek out products and solutions that could integrate with their Drupal-based platform to enable government agencies to deliver a more personalised digital experience for our citizens. One of the 6 enhanced user journeys examples provided in the expression of interest particularly stood out to us, specifically the evaluation of eligibility, obligations, and entitlements. Quote, "This is the stage where a citizen is figuring out what they're trying to do to either access an entitlement or to comply with a government policy or legal requirement." This was the user journey and use case that excited us the most because, in our opinion, it represented the most authentic opportunity to deliver a personalized experience that arguably matters the most. And that is when our citizens are perhaps the most vulnerable and in need to help to understand their eligibility and entitlements to government services. Serendipitously, this aligned nicely to a project stream within a separate program we are actively co-contributing to called GovZero Aotearoa. This is an initiative responsible for developing open digital infrastructure for public good and greater social equality. So why rules as code? So rules as code is an emerging trend that is the process that takes legislation, regulation, and/or policy and turns it into machine-readable code. These coded rules are then simply exposed via an open API to enable external systems, i.e. digital channels, to present content that is contextualized. There are several benefits that this paradigm represents, but perhaps the biggest is that codified rules are centralized as a single source of truth and then exposed as a reusable service or utility that can drive and serve many applications, as opposed to each application having to individually interpret the rules and update the business logic each time there is a change. We were super excited to present this alternative approach and demonstrate how this paradigm could be adopted by GovCMS to enable government agencies to create, consolidate, test, and use rules to ultimately offer personalized experiences to citizens that were meaningful and dignified. And at the same time, maintain the open ethos of GovCMS by integrating Drupal with an open source rules as code technology, such as OpenFisca, enabling them to continue to co-create and co-innovate with industry. We were stoked to be given the opportunity to build a proof of concept to demonstrate how rules as code could work in practice with a very meaningful use case, specifically to help citizens understand if their COVID-19 vaccination status is up to date. And now to show you how we did this, I hand over to my colleague, Dr. Philippa Martin. Over to you, Philippa.
Thanks, Alfred. I'm excited to be able to present our customer experience. So first of all, in terms of COVID vaccinations, we looked at 3 different questions or journeys. The first one being, am I up to date with my COVID vaccinations? The second one, do I need to be vaccinated to work? And the third one, am I eligible for vaccinations? First of all, though, I want you to consider a before and after scenario, before rules as code and after rules as code. So in the current situation, which is before rules as code, when people are looking for information about vaccination, they're often going to multiple websites, state government websites, federal government websites, ATAGI, etc., wading through information, content, trying to find the most up-to-date information and what's relevant for them. The end user experience, it's information-based, but they're also left with uncertainty. Compare that to a rules as code version, where they're able to go to a website, answer a few questions, get personalized information, and to know that that information is correct. The user experience is interactive and the citizen is left with certainty. So I now want to show you the proof of concept website that we created. So this is a homepage that we created to provide a realistic example of what a COVID-19 web page might look like. However, all of the links go to a dummy proof of concept page, except for these 2 journeys. So I want to have a look at this journey first. So this is how am I up to date with my COVID vaccinations? So if we start this journey, you'll see that clearly the user is shown where they are in the journey at all times. So you, your health, your COVID vaccinations and results. We start off with information about the person. Let's say we're talking about someone who's 32 with no health conditions. And they've had 3 doses so far. And let's say the last dose was in June. So at the moment they're at your COVID vaccinations, they hit submit and they're taken to the results page. It clearly shows them that they're in the results section from the user journey and they're given the message, congratulations, you're currently up to date based on the information you've provided. Now in this example, they're also told that they are eligible for another dose if they'd like. Looking through this information, what you see highlighted in yellow, this is the content that's being driven by OpenFISCA. So for example, OpenFISCA has worked out that based on the person's age, the 2 recommended vaccines are Pfizer and Moderna, but that they're also able to have Novavax and AstraZeneca because they're over 18. Now, one of the most powerful things about rules and code and OpenFISCA is that it can be used by many different interfaces, such as different websites. To demonstrate this, we created a secondary website. This one is called the Department of First Nations, so it's a dedicated website. We've only got one journey in this one, which is the Am I Up to Date with My COVID Vaccinations? Very similar as you can see, but when you go in, you're given this extra question, are you of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander origin? Now going back to our main website and to this second journey, do I have to be vaccinated for my work? This one finally shows how jurisdictions could be brought together with rules as code. So this second journey, people enter in their state, information about the sector they work in, and they then get the result as to whether they need to be vaccinated. So you're probably asking, how do we get from the legislation all the way to that user experience? So it's all done by rules mapping. So that is the way we get from legislation to rules as code to the final user experience. So the mapping process focuses on analysing the rules and capturing the legislative requirements, eligibility logic, and if there is anything, calculation logic. We use Miro for this process, and this is an example of our Miro board for the COVID proof of concept. You can see it's quite busy, quite a lot happening there. So in this case, we started off, our first pass was really just pulling out the main rules. For example, for 12 to 15-year-olds with no underlying health issues, when they have 2 doses, they're up to date. From there, we moved on to the user journey flow. Again, breaking it down by age, but taking someone through the flow of if they're immunocompromised, have the disability, and how many vaccine doses they should have. Finally, we look at eligibility logic. So in this case, we're looking at up-to-date equals. So the example on screen, up-to-date if you're age 50, if you're immunocompromised, then you need 5 doses, and if you're not immunocompromised, you need the 4 doses. So after we've done the mapping process, all of that information gets turned into the code itself in OpenFISCA. To talk to you a little bit more about OpenFISCA and the other parts of this technical solution, I'll hand over to Steve. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Philippa. Hey everyone, my name is Steve. I'll be running through the proposed architecture for how rules as code will fit into the broader GovCMS ecosystem and how changes can be applied to that rules as code system in effective ways. Before we get into the solution architecture, let's start with some definitions. What is OpenFISCA and how does it fit into the overall solution? OpenFISCA is an open source API first rules as code framework that is developed in 2011 for the French government. It standardizes the way in which rules are written and provides a common request response pattern that can be used by connected clients who are integrating with the API. This allows for integrations between different systems. In the examples provided here, they can be ranging from websites, mobile applications to voice channels, and any other type of connected application that you might need. In this case, we chose to use Drupal to integrate with the rules engine provided by OpenFISCA. The overall architecture of the solution follows a microservice paradigm, where OpenFISCA exposes the rules engine via a REST API. Drupal provides a content API, and connected clients can make requests between both systems to build engaging user experiences. These experiences collect user information, submit that information back to OpenFisca over secure channels. OpenFisca will then run the submitted data through the rules and calculations interfaces that have been provided. Once OpenFisca is finished with the calculations, it will formulate a response and send that back to the client. The client is then able to determine what to do with this information. For example, they can make a request to gather related content from Drupal's content API. The solution also proposes using a loose content syndication between OpenFisca and Drupal. This is to create taxonomy terms which allows content editors to relate content to decisions that can be made by the OpenFisca rules engine. In the proof of concept, Drupal acts as both the content store and the web interface. A custom module was built to extend GovCMS by integrating with the web form module. This module will provide integration points with the OpenFisca API and extensions to web form elements to allow content editors to manage the data collection process. The content editor could also make journey decisions and allow web forms to collect information in different manners. They can also then react based on the decisions that OpenFisca has presented and change the user journey flow, so collect additional information or move to a different screen based on the response from OpenFisca. We'll get into change management now. So change management is one of the key benefits of a well-implemented rules as code solution. By providing a machine-readable single source of truth for rules code, a rules as code system helps change management process work in a reliable and more predictable way. Changes to rules code and rules content can be managed in a similar way to how typical software release and deployment process is managed. Stakeholders that manage dependent systems will be responsible for updating their systems in line with the release notes and deployment schedules of the rules as code system itself. The rules as code solution that was developed for the proof of concept helps demonstrate how a well-architected website would help reduce the burden of keeping website content up to date with rules changes. To help illustrate the benefits of the rules as code change management process, we outlined two example scenarios, one involving a parameter change, changing the minimum vaccination age from 5 to 3, and the other involves a variable formula change, adding a new category that needs to be collected by the user. In this case, it was allowing the user to define if they were pregnant or not. In all cases where rule changes are involved, a rules codification workshop is needed. This allows the rules owner and others to work together to ensure the rules are accurately mapped. The rules are then codified in OpenFisca. And in the case of the first scenario, that's all that's needed. The connected client will make an API request with the updated value, and OpenFisca's rule will change the response based on that. In the second scenario, this adds additional parameters and values that can be submitted to OpenFisca for additional rules evaluation process. In this case, the web form would also need a small configuration change to allow submitting the data as you are pregnant or not. As mentioned earlier, impacts on other UIs or systems will depend on how they are implemented and will be managed by a structured release process described earlier. So with the rules as code, you change rules once at the source and the change flows through to connected systems. That's it. We'll start the closing now. So a big thank you to GovCMS for giving us the opportunity to demonstrate to the community how rules as code can represent a more personalized and dignified experience for our citizens. We haven't solved everything yet, and there's many themes and considerations to change management and governance that needs to be figured out, but it's a great beginning and an excellent start to a new chapter. Reach out to us at salsa.digital, info@salsa.digital, or go to salsa.digital, expertise rules as code for more information. Thank you.